This is Speak of the Devils on AZ Family Sports.
Welcome to Speak of the Devils, the premier television show for Sun Devil football. I'm Brad Denny with 3TV and CBS 5.
Season's greetings, y'all. I'm Joe Healey with DevilsDigest.com.
Of course, Joe, the holidays are just a couple days away from right now, and it also is National Signing Day, a pretty important day on the college football calendar. Now, its importance has perhaps evolved over the last couple of years in this transfer portal era, but still, today was a big day for the Sun Devils. A lot of new names are officially on the Sun Devil roster.
Yeah, in the days of your signing day in early February, used to be a huge deal, a lot of surprises. That was before the transfer portal, before these two signing periods. Those are all good things, and they help a program develop. So today's a big day. As you mentioned, ASU added quite a few new players to the fold, both with their high school signees and some very key transfers that were added over the course of this past weekend.
Yeah, so we'll dive into the new crop of Sun Devils, and you'll hear from a couple of them a little bit later on in the show. But, let's start off with the high school signees. Now, ASU did not add any junior college players, just all strictly newcomers from the prep ranks. And a couple guys that kind of immediately jump out, Joe. Four-star running back Jason Brown. ASU was able to get him away from the likes of Washington and Oregon, plucking him from the Seattle area. He's a guy that brings a lot of big-time excitement.
Yeah, for those who follow us on Twitter, you saw over the weekend he was named a first-team All-American by Max Preps, with a very reputable high school recruiting and high school coverage site. I believe he was a finalist for their National Player of the Year award as well.
Not bad.
So for ASU to get him out of Seattle, away from the likes of Oregon and Washington, which are very successful, run the ball a lot, especially in the case of Oregon, that's a huge win for ASU. It's a guy that probably is going to see a lot of the field here coming up in 2024.
Yeah, and they weren't done in terms of the Pacific Northwest offerings with tight end Jaden Fortier, prior guest on this show. Now, unfortunately, he suffered a torn ACL in a high school playoff game, so he'll be out of spring ball, but it looks like he might be good to go next fall. He was a guy that, some services had as another four-star guy, extremely athletic tight end, had a monster senior season, so ASU was able to keep a hold of him as Oregon made a late charge.
Yeah, for the short and the long-term future of the tight end position, obviously Jalen Conyers now at Texas Tech. ASU needs to reload at that position, and he's a big-time target for the Devils to bring in. So once he's healthy, if that is this season, he can be a difference maker out there.
All right, switching over to some notable names on the defense. There was one four-star signee for the Sun Devils, and that's defensive back Tony-Louis Nkuba, who you'll hear from in our third segment of this episode. He's a big-bodied defensive back, probably going to play safety. He's from Texas, along with Chris Johnson, another intriguing guy, perhaps more of a corner. So a couple of guys that perhaps could factor in early in year one.
Yeah, if there's one position group that I think ASU did the best with when it comes to this high school signing class, it's in the secondary. Obviously, that covers a lot of different positions, and in this defense, you're going to have five guys out there pretty much at any given time. But I think that the coaching staff did a really good job in how they recruited the defensive back positions.
Yeah, and also they added some other players, including one notable special teams addition that we'd be kind of remiss of not discussing, because especially if ASU struggles in the punt game. Canyon Floyd, a local commit coming out Valley product. He's a guy who had two monster years to end his prep career, and so he's also has the ability to also be a place kicker as well.
Yeah, ASU is going to need a new place kicker with Dario Longetto moving on, and obviously the punter situation this past year was something else to say the very least. So bringing in capable kickers, whether it's at the place kicker, punter, ASU really needs it all. So for Floyd to come on board, that's a big get as well.
Now let's turn our attention now to the transfers from existing FBS programs. ASU had another huge official visit weekend, and just like last weekend that we recapped in our prior episode, a lot of quality talent has committed to become a Sun Devil, and probably the one that generated the most buzz was Raleek Brown, the running back wide receiver coming over from USC, a former five-star recruit, a guy who didn't play a whole lot or didn't get to contribute too much in his first couple of years, but is looking like it could be a potentially very dangerous weapon in this Kenny Dillingham offense.
Yeah, he's someone that very versatile, can catch the ball, can run the ball. I think that he's pretty strict about the fact that he is a running back who can catch the ball, but they don't just give out 5 stars for no reason. So even though he played 2 years at USC and didn't necessarily live up to that billing there, it's a fresh slate here at ASU, and you can bet Kenny Dillingham and all the offensive staff, of course, new offensive coordinator Marcus Arroyo, they're going to find creative ways to get him the ball.
Now, last weekend, ASU secured a number of good commitments, but a lot of fans were just pointing out none of them were offensive linemen. Well, they rectified that with a couple of nice transfers. Joey Sua is coming over from Arkansas, a guy who actually was Phoenix native as well. And then Issei Matuatea from New Mexico, 20 games of starting experience under his belt. So a couple of guys coming over from that FBS level that could factor in probably for a day one impact.
Yeah, and these are not small dudes, especially these guys are, I think, both tipping the scales over 320 pounds. I think Sua is almost near the 350-pound mark.
346.
346. So, you get him a meal of food that's going to fill him up right. He's going to be at that 350-pound mark. But, yeah, you got to get those bodies in there and to get guys that have the size and some starting experience. At this point, that's really all you can ask for.
All right, now a couple of also impact guys on the defensive side of the ball. Now, Cyrus Fiaseu was not just San Diego State's leading tackler a season ago, Joe. As a sophomore, we should point out, also voted team MVP, and ASU has a dire need at linebacker.
He led the team in tackles, in sacks, and TFLs. Had 3 forced fumbles, 3 fumble recoveries. This guy is a playmaker. That's what you really love to see. And San Diego State, they've been up and down over the last few years, but they've had some success. So he's someone that I think could be a difference maker on the field this year.
ASU also secured the verbal commitment from safety Kamari Wilson, a one-time 4-star commit prospect out of the 2022 class. Played a couple of years at Florida. Now is going to be joining looking to be a pretty stacked safety position for the Sun Devils.
Yeah, they got to replace some folks out there in the secondary with Jordan Clark moving on. Chris Edmonds finishing up his eligibility. He's someone that's going to battle for a starting position.
Yeah, with the Shamari Simmons and Xavier Alford now back and going to be in that fold as well. Looks like the back line of that Sun Devil defense should be pretty potent in the years to come, as all these guys have multiple years of eligibility left. After the break, we are going to be bringing a portion of the conversation that we had early on with DevilsDigest.com publisher Hod Rabino as he gives his expert analysis and insight into what ASU was able to put together for National Signing Day. Welcome back to Speak of the Devils. Next up is a portion of our conversation with DevilsDigest.com publisher Hod Rabino as he dives deep into ASU's recruiting class. The full conversation you can find on our new podcast episode. All right, so let's start out by maybe talking about the transfers before we dive into kind of the signing class. Just in a general sense, how effective do you think this group of transfers so far has been in addressing the key team needs?
Yeah, I think it's definitely been effective. We talk about addressing the offensive line and defensive line, which I know were really screaming as an area of need at the end of the season and really throughout the season for that matter, too. There were some linebackers that were added as well, even adding a capable backup quarterback in Sam Levitt, who transferred from Michigan State. I think was important, too. What I do like with the group of high school players is that there's a lot of physical defensive backs that were added to the mix. None of them are shorter than 6 feet. So I think that physical element that the coaches are trying to establish in the defensive backfield is something that they definitely were able to establish. They were able to add 4 offensive linemen. One of them is going to be on a mission only coming on campus in 2026, but I also thought that just really beefing up on the line of scrimmage is something that was accomplished both in the transfer portal group as well as the high school group that signed today.
And of course, with the last few years and the prominence of the transfer portal, really just kind of, especially the last couple of years with the ASU, and just reshaping this roster and really kind of rebuilding it from the ground up. How do you think that's affected the Sun Devil recruiting strategy for the quote-unquote traditional signing periods of high school and junior college athletes?
Well, I just think that when it comes to the ASU coaches, they really toe that line, which I think every program really toes, as addressing the immediate needs with the transfer portal and building for the future with high school players. Now, that does not mean that every high school player that's signed today is absolutely destined to redshirt in 2024. But needless to say that when you talk about players with the physical maturity and the mental maturity, which is very important, obviously, when you talk about both lines of scrimmage, you definitely are going to find more success in players from the portal rather than high school players. But when it comes to defensive backs, not that ASU didn't sign 2 players from the transfer portal defensive back, but maybe that's also a area where ASU felt that they did have pretty good established starters and really to beef up over there in the high school ranks is something that really was needed. But again, just going back to my earlier point, the plug and play 99% of the time are really going to come from the transfer portal rather than from the high school ranks. But that does not mean that they don't have some really quality talent from that high school ranks, and I think more than a couple of players that I do not expect to redshirt at all in 2024.
So let's dive into that. Obviously, first from that group of transfers, who do you think are going to be those plug and play kind of day one starters, or maybe at worst significant contributors? And then kind of looking at the high school ranks, who do you think has a chance to come in and make a quick impact?
Well, I think when it comes to transfer portal, you really have to look at the defensive line first and foremost. And I think guys like Justin Wootley from Cincinnati, J.P. Dieter from Purdue, those are players that I believe, at least in Wootley's case, did play defensive end, but they're going to ask to be played inside in ASU's front four. And I'm sure that you and I talked about in previous shows throughout the season that Brian Ward, ASU's defensive coordinator's approach is not really to have that massive nose tackle or pretty stout three tech tackle, but really just have very athletic players play in the interior and be not just the plug the gap type of player, but also be able to rush the quarterback to really disrupt the backfield. So those are two players that I would see over there. I think that the linebackers that they got, Justin Court from Arkansas and the linebacker from San Diego State, who was the team MVP. Those are two players that I definitely fully expect to be in the rotation. And because ASU only plays two linebackers and the depth is pretty shallow as it is, I think any transfer that you brought in that position in specific are players that you'd expect to contribute right away. When you look at offense, obviously the name that jumps right at you is Raleek Brown, who I know that you interviewed earlier this week. Wide receiver slash running back. I think a player that's going to add a very, very dynamic element to this ASU offense, and really somebody that I think can just give this offense a whole different look when it's all said and done. If I'm looking at the high school players that signed, I'll look at another Brown, this time Jason Brown, the 4-star the running back from Seattle. Just like Raleek Brown, it's a very, very dynamic running back, just adding an element that this ASU ground attack was sorely missing. So that's somebody that can see contribute right away. I talked about all the young defensive backs that were signed, and I think the two that really jump at me is Tony-Louis Nkuba, who was also a 4-star prospect like Jason Brown. Somebody could play either safety or cornerback. I think ASU would like to play him at safety, at least initially. Somebody who definitely can make an impact early on. And then you got another defensive back. This is more on the cornerback side. Chris Johnson II, a back-to-back Texas high school state champion, another physical player in that defensive backfield for ASU. So those are two players that I feel can really make the presence known early. So again, that goes back to my earlier point, where there definitely are some plug and play players from the transfer portal. Almost all of them are really expected to be that. But I think that a lot of the high school players, especially we talk about Jason Brown, running back, and the two defensive backs that I mentioned as well, those are players that I do not expect to redshirt. I think can really make their presence known and make this ASU roster much deeper and much more talented. So if that crazy injury bug in 2023 is going to rear its ugly head again in 2024, ASU this time around, I think, will be more equipped to handle that adversity.
What did they tell you in terms of how they would like to use you, a guy with a very versatile skill set?
Me and Marcus watched film with me and my pops, and then he put my film, we watched my film, and then related to what he'd do in his offense. So that was nice. And then he said he'd use me as a back for sure, back, and then flex me out to wide out to motioning, coming in, coming back in, screens, all stuff like that. Just give me a space.
So obviously, a guy coming out of high school, a 5-star recruit, blue chip guy. Did you, obviously, comes with that a lot of expectations. Did you ever feel any added pressure, in terms of just knowing that you were so highly regarded coming to high school and you're one of those those blue chip guys?
No, I never felt that pressure because I just know what I'm gonna do when I step on the field. So
So for any Sun Devil fans who might not have seen you in action, give our listeners and viewers a self-scouting report. What can they expect to see from you in terms of your skill set and what you can do with the ball on the field?
you'll see a lot of shiftiness, a lot of speed, a lot of touchdowns for sure.
And so, ASU is obviously, a program that, Kenny Dillingham's kind of rebuilding from the ground up. And how appealing is that for you to kind of, have a chance to be kind of in on the ground floor and part of something, that's building and working in the way up?
Yeah, I'm just trying to help Kenny bring something special to this program for sure, and I think it's gonna happen because it look like we getting the right pieces, we getting it right. So I feel good about next year. I think we gonna have a winning season for sure.
All right, Tony. So obviously kind of the end of a long process in the recruitment. How does it feel to kind of finally put a wrap on it all and officially become a Sun Devil?
So it feels good. I'm ready to. I feel like I've put in the work to go where I want to go, and I'm ready to go put it on the field. So I'm trying to go be something great.
Obviously, there's a lot of schools that are after you and wanting you to become part of that program. Ultimately, what were the big things that you were looking for in your next college, and why was Arizona State the one place that checked those boxes for you?
So one thing I was really needing, I needed a good relationship with the coach. I had a great relationship with Coach Carrington, and the city matched the vibe, everything. I love the way Coach Kenny Dillingham works. I love all that. It's just they sold everything to me, and I feel like it's a good place to build. And I feel exactly what we're gonna go do.
So, go back a little bit, I believe you came to the United States in fourth grade from the Democratic Republic of the Congo. How long did it take to kind of get acclimated to life here in America?
So I'm pretty sure it happened pretty fast. I used to play soccer, like that was my favorite sport. And then in middle school, I ended up playing football because my friends were playing football, and I wasn't very good though. I was on a B team, and so I wasn't taking it serious. It was just kind of for fun. And then I just got into it my freshman year, and it became more serious because I could see what I could really do with football, and if I can get a spot on varsity, and I knew I wasn't going to be on varsity my sophomore year, but I knew I was going to be on varsity my junior year if I worked hard my sophomore year. So it was just all about waiting for me.
So, obviously, as you're getting to know Arizona State, the university, the football program, obviously with a relatively new staff, what were some of the things that kind of jumped out to you most that made you feel that was the right place for you?
It was very family oriented, and I liked that a lot. The coaches were super nice and super cool. I met a lot of family members, and that was just great because it feels so close and tight knit, and I love that.
So, on a recent visit, what were some of the things that, getting to see things, getting recruited, over calls, texts, and such like that is one thing. But, when you're actually at a place and kind of immersed in it, what were some of the things that really kind of jumped out to you and kind of reinforced that this was the right decision?
The coaches' attitudes, they were just great. Like, they were very real, and they didn't tell me what I wanted to hear, but told me what I could and had to do to get out on the field faster, get out there and be ready to start and play for them. And then also meeting some of the guys on the team was also a great experience, and I really loved it, and that was a very dope visit.
Welcome back to Speak of the Devils. Now, as we talked about in our podcast episode, a lot of new faces, both when coming in through the signing class and the transfer portal for the Sun Devils. That has really kind of helped to reshape this roster in the second year under Kenny Dillingham. So right now, let's kind of dive into some current status of certain position groups, and also, in the months to come, as this roster continues to evolve, some areas that we think they really need to further seek some help. Right now, Joe, I think they're looking pretty good at running back, wide receiver, and safety. Obviously, we talked about the excitement of Raleek Brown. The wide receiver is just almost just entirely a lot of guys coming back. Jake Smith is now eligible this year, and then Kamari Wilson joining a pretty loaded safety group. I feel those guys or those position groups are in good shape right now.
Yeah, I think you feel pretty good about those. I'd say at wide receiver, I'd keep like a spot if you just have some star that wants to come here. You don't necessarily have to take too many flyers on guys, but if there's like a can't miss prospect, obviously you take that at just about any position. But that's one I think you could still get some talent infusion. Running back with Scadaboo, Brooks coming back, and with Brown coming into the fold, you feel pretty good there. And also guys like Kyson Brown and others. Quarterback, they've stocked up, they've replaced what's departed, so they're pretty good there. So to your point, there are some position groups that I think that right now you probably aren't going to see too much movement.
Yeah, and so obviously a lot of fans are going to be focusing on the quarterback group, especially with Jaden Rashada coming back. Trent Bourget is also coming back as well, and adding the former four-star Sam Levitt from Michigan State. We'll certainly dive in more into this in the months ahead. But your early read on Springs and the quarterback battle, I know a lot of fans are already starting to buzz about it.
Yeah, I mean it's going to be pretty much obviously between Rashada and Bourget, at least to begin with, and we'll see where they are health-wise, where they are developmental-wise, because we didn't see the best of either of those two players at any point in the 2023 season. So I think that the competition is going to be pretty thick, pretty heavy. And Bourget, when he's at 100%, if he can play like he did in 2022, that's encouraging. Jaden Rashada brings that high four-star caliber pedigree that he brought to ASU. So spring's going to be real interesting in that quarterback room.
All right, and there are some positions that ASU has addressed to a degree, but also seems like they're probably not done yet, or at least maybe they're feeling that there might be a piece or two away right now. And I think you look at the offensive line, of course, specifically the interior offensive line, as we talked about off the top, a couple of nice FBS transfers that project probably to the guard position. Linebacker adding a couple of guys to the transfer portal, still might be a guy away. Tight end might be a little bit thin, even though they're adding a couple of guys. Joe, what are some positions that you think that they've improved, but perhaps still a work in progress?
I'd say like the offensive line with the transfers that ASU's gotten, that's a good start with what was picked up last week. Those probably factor more on the interior, so you might be talking about the offensive tackles. I'll echo the defensive tackle. Maybe lightning can strike 3 times the last 2 years. ASU has really done well in the grad transfer route with Deshaun Mallory, Nesta Jade Silvera before him on the interior line. Can they go 3 for 3 in that regard? That would be something to behold. They didn't really go that direction in the high school recruiting. I don't think they signed any interior defensive linemen, so that's going to be something they really, really need to hit.
Yeah, I mean, that was probably the next category. Talking about, great point. The tackles, both offensive and defensive. Now, I think on offense, you're looking at, Bram Walden, a very young offensive tackle, shined when he had a chance to play last year, but as he was battling injuries. Unfortunately, Emmett Boley went out early in the year with kind of that nasty leg injury, but he's looking to come back pretty strong. You might have your starting left tackle right there, but as we saw, Joe, the depth can be tested in a hurry at this level. Yeah,
the injuries that were experienced in year one under Kenny Dillingham probably give him and the rest of the staff the need to have not only one contingency plan, but a series of layers of contingency plans, which probably affects the way that they approach not only high school, junior college recruiting, but the transfer portal as well. Yeah, so it's going to be a very active couple of weeks here coming up. And in the months ahead, of course, this current transfer portal window is open until January 3rd. And then another one opens up in the middle of April following spring practices, where you'll probably see some attrition. Some of the guys currently on the roster maybe jumping in the portal. And ASU far from done. If they can get some more help in the trenches. They obviously have some very talented playmakers and on both sides of the ball. So, Joe, a lot that we'll be discussing in the weeks and months ahead. Yeah, there's never any dull moments. This transfer portal is still open. We think that maybe the guys who will enter have entered, but you never know. There can be surprises. All right, so make sure you download our full podcast episode. We have 5 great guests on that episode, and we'll be diving into great detail on all the new Sun Devils, and we will be back next week with a Sun Devil year in review.